Oh, she was. Can you hear us now, Christine?
Closet, didn't she? And there's nothing in the closet.
You still can't hear us, can you?
And she has her mic off. You can see.
Oh, yeah, on the left.
I'm.
Who's running it?
Message her
You
to
can
turn on
unmute
her
still or
audio.
something. You can't. Can she even see? Who can she see
Doesn't look like
for
she can
sign
see.
language?
Oh, she's changing her controls now.
Yeah.
Or maybe Kevin is.
So she's on mute. I think maybe we have ours on mute.
That's what I was
We
trying
muted her.
to ask who's got the controls, because we've got her muted.
Yeah, that's what it is.
She's got her microphone
Oh,
on.
now it's
No,
on.
it's unmuted.
Say something. I'm giving up on you. Oh, going backwards.
We just lost her.
Nope, back.
Let's.
Not hearing us either. She just said off mute, but not hearing us.
Are we okay now? Are we rolling in? I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order and take roll and wait. Christine will chime in as soon as she gets squared away. And Christine, when you can hear us, raise your hand.
Well, we have to chat that to her, because she can't hear you say that. She just chatted that she can't hear.
So there's. Is Max around, or Brand, or anybody that can help her? Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we'll do a roll call. And as soon as Christine gets tuned in, she can get tuned in. Bob Suppes.
Here.
Leticia Gomez.
Here.
Suzanne Good.
Here.
Joe Vecchio.
Here.
Susan Stewart.
Here?
Frank Cooper is absent. Eric Seward.
Here.
Janice Miller is absent. Tom Childers is absent. Mary Pack.
Here.
Bruce, I think, is going to be absent. And Jan is absent. And Elise
Here.
is here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Christine, can you hear me?
Talking to her.
That's 100%. Central meeting, the microphone. I can see it.
Did everybody receive a copy of the minutes, of the both sets of minutes that I sent out?
Yes.
Yes.
Do I hear a motion to amend the minutes of 3 May?
Just curious, I couldn't tell what the difference was. What was the amendment? I really, honestly, I read them and I could not tell what the amendment was.
My hearing aid blocked out. Say
I
that again.
I couldn't tell what the amendment was.
Okay, here's what
Jay,
happened.
can you hear me?
We marked Tom Childers as absent, but he was present.
I can hear you on my left ear.
And Linda caught it when she was reviewing the stream. So, and then Amy, he arrived late, and so Amy redid the notes.
Okay.
You Sharpie, you smarty. Do I hear a motion to, did you make that, or were you just?
I'll move to approve the minutes from May, I think it's May 3rd.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, and on the minutes, okay, all those in favor of approving the 3 May minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Do I hear a motion to approve the
Yes.
5 July
Yes.
minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
They've been moved and second to approve the 5 July minutes. All in favor,
Keep all my
say
soul.
aye.
Aye.
Okay, we did not receive any correspondence that was related only to agenda items. And now we are at the point where we're ready to review so we're ready to receive the presentation. I think that I don't know whether everybody brought their spreadsheet with them or not, but I think the spreadsheet that Kevin's going to cover today might be the same one that I sent, or close to it, that I sent in a file since the last meeting, and I had sent it earlier, so you might all have that spreadsheet. But the rest of the presentation was not available, and we're going to change. I keep saying every meeting we're going to change that, so you can review that. But still don't have it. Now, did everybody see the agenda that was? No, you didn't see this. So that hasn't been. Ann has not. You have not posted that. You did not receive that presentation from Kevin.
I haven't received anything.
Okay. I sent you the agenda,
Yeah, you have the agenda.
and we have it.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I sent the spreadsheet to everybody, and I think I said you have a copy in your files.
I would have to look.
Okay. And then I sent copies of the minutes to everybody. And you'll have that after the meeting. And then, so I think we're square. We're just getting our stuff together. But I only received Dave's agenda this morning, or Dave's presentation this morning. So we couldn't get that. Christine's still trying to get
I can hear it.
By pressing star 6.
Hear Jay talking.
I do hear Jay talking through here.
Jay, I have a question. Are you referring to your email of July 25th? It would be the last document attached of the 5 or 6? Okay, all right. Oh, maybe not.
I had sent everybody a copy of 5101 earlier, which is the Delaware Code, which tells us to do what we're
Right.
doing. And also a copy of that spreadsheet. That was an old spreadsheet that we used when we were doing the budget back in June, but it was appropriate. Or excuse me, not back in June, back in March. But it was a good spreadsheet. Told all the expenses and then Kevin and Evan got together and redid the first 2 pages where they have the percentages of
Welcome to Ring
of
Central
work
Meeting.
spent doing stormwater.
Enter your meeting ID, followed by the pound or hash sign.
Dialing in again.
Got it.
Enter your participant ID, followed by pound.
Well, how can we not hear her?
We
but
can
hear-
hear.
In the Ring Central Meeting now. There are 3 participants in the meeting.
Are you able to hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Can she hear us?
I can hear you. Wonderful.
Well, welcome to the meeting, Christine. This is, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came here, and we'll press on from that.
Did you already give a little Dave update?
Sure. Yeah, thank you, and I'm sorry about the technical difficulties here. Yeah, my name is Christine Estes. I'm with AECOM. I'm actually based out of the Germantown, Maryland office. I live in Washington, D.C. I've been working for AECOM for 15 years now. I've worked with Dave Athey throughout some of those years, and willing to step in here as he's dealing with some health issues. I do have some stormwater utility background. Just sound check. Can you all still hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Is that yes?
Yes.
Okay. I started out working in stormwater utilities almost 20 years ago, helping the city of Stafford County build a stormwater utility, which they at the time did not get passed. They did not have a good outreach campaign as part of that, and they did not get the political support. So I did see the I had that experience of seeing how important outreach really is to get these stormwater utilities passed. I also helped the city of Annapolis, who already had a stormwater utility, but had some new financial needs to meet a new Chesapeake Bay PMDL. So they had to increase their funding. So I helped them reassess their financial needs, as well as determine a new rate for the city of Annapolis. I've also most recently helped the city of Alexandria, Virginia, develop a stormwater rate structure for that city, which has been implemented by now. Any questions on my background? I am a civil engineer. I forgot to mention that. So.
Will Christine be giving the presentation, or?
She has.
Okay.
She has to have control.
Before you start, we just, our regular consultant, Dave Athey, is sidelined with some medical issues. He still is in contact and everything, and as soon as he gets squared away, he'll be back. But for a little while, Christine will be helping us and taking us forward. So we do welcome you, and begin.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll try to share the slides here. See if I can get this to work correctly. If I can put it in presentation mode here. All right. Are you all seeing that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So yeah, Dave helped put these slides together and tried to pull together an agenda for today's presentation. Please feel free to jump in at any time. I was not in the previous task force meetings. I've heard they have been very successful and effective. So if I'm missing something that has been discussed before, please do feel free to chime in along the way here. So today we wanted to really focus on what our goals and objectives are for the meeting, recap from the May meeting, look at the pros and cons of options for funding, look at some public outreach aspects, revenue questions, future task force meeting topics as well. So some of the questions that Dave wanted us to try to get out of this meeting today is to make sure we're looking at the different funding options to be considered, start thinking about the initial public outreach approaches to undertake. I did see in the meeting minutes from the last meeting in July that did start getting discussed. Looking at deciding whether or not really this should be new revenue or revenue neutral or some sort of hybrid approach. If it is revenue neutral, which existing sources should be reevaluated and what information is needed. Is this the, do I have the right one up here? Look back in here. Oh, no, I have the wrong slides up. Sorry about that. Let me share the ones he created for today.
Did we get a copy of these?
Mm-hmm. It was in Jay's email.
Not.
We haven't
Okay.
seen that.
Okay.
Got the wrong ones? Oh.
I just realized you all already went through this stuff. Sorry about that.
Oh, yeah.
Christine, I don't think any of us have seen the copy of the document that was, the small copy that was in the screen, and I don't think we can read it from here either. Can everybody read that small?
The one she had up was the one that he was going to present at the last meeting but didn't.
Right.
So maybe that's what we're supposed to be doing today.
No, she has the August
Okay.
one, yeah.
Okay.
But the beginning of it looks exactly the
Yeah.
same, so it's very easy to
Okay.
pull the wrong one.
Jay, is that it right there? How many pages? So we
8,
prepare
7 or 8,
ourselves,
yeah.
maybe.
Sorry about this. I'm not.
Doesn't have that
I know he created a
spreadsheet.
new slide. Oh, okay. You shared them, Jay. Okay. Well, here we go. Let me copy. Here we go. Sorry about that. Oh, no, that's the last one.
Jay, do you mind if I pass this down? Preview? Yeah, it's like 6 pages, I don't know, 7 pages maybe.
Jay, you'd shared the slides from July, I think, and I don't see the August ones in here. I apologize. I'm not finding the new ones that Dave had just created. Let me see. Here we go. All right. For some reason it was not coming up when I was searching for his email. All right. Let me share once again here. Okay. All right, these are the correct slides here.
There we go, yeah, okay.
Are you all seeing the slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. There's another. All right, so back to the what we want to cover today is really go over the goals and objectives again, recap from the July meeting, which I just kind of went over because I was looking at the July meeting slides there. Looking at the preferred option for stormwater fee basis, review of the spreadsheet and the ERU concept, review of future task force meeting topics as well. So today we do want to focus again on you know, if this will be new revenue. I believe this was discussed back in July, but or if it will be a hybrid approach. And then focusing more on, is impervious area the appropriate basis for a stormwater utility fee? And I can give you all a little background on that. And then if yes, is the ERU concept the best way to handle single family properties? Do you want to pause here and discuss this first bullet item?
You want to advance 1 page, please, Yeah, Christine?
You're not on page 2.
Sure. These were the July meeting takeaways here.
We're seeing the title page. We're not on the screen you're on.
Oh, you're not. All right, let me start again. Go into presentation mode. Okay. So now, Are you seeing the meeting goals and objectives now?
Yes.
Okay. So I thought we would pause here and focus on the first bullet item before we go into some of these other issues. Do we want to revisit this topic, or has that been decided at the previous meetings about a new revenue or a revenue neutral approach?
Well, we didn't decide, but there was a vast majority which was leaning toward a dedicated stormwater impact fee. I was the dissenter, the main dissenter.
Christine, if you look at the agenda, we're going to talk about options for funding the basis, our basis for a fee structure as soon as you finish your presentation. I think you're going to recap some of the possibilities of, well, there it is. Yeah, you're going to recap some of the options, and most of them we've talked about in the past. But once you recap them, we'll be ready to vote on them and to select a basis for our fee structure.
Christine, do you have data, like these aerial photos that were used for data? Like, I feel, doesn't everybody want to see how accurate the data is that we would then vote on deciding to use to implement this stormwater impact fee? Like, I was just talking to Jay about people who have a concrete slab under their garbage cans. I can't believe these drones are able to capture who has grass under the garbage cans and who has concrete.
They get very, very accurate, incredibly accurate, down to, I think the grid's 3 feet or something like that.
Okay, well, we
But
haven't seen
we
this
can,
data.
the data is there, and it's not a matter of whether it's valid or not, it's just a matter of whether we want to use it. And that's a decision that we're going
So
to
we
be
do,
making.
the data, we do have the data, and it's very accurate. The thing would be, there is going to need to be some updates, because the data, I think, was from 2017 or 2018. So you've got several years worth of construction changes, but all manageable things. I mean, the data itself is very good for the pervious area.
Go ahead and continue on with your presentation, Christine, and we will we'll hear what you have to say, and then when your presentation is over with, we'll start taking consensus to see where we head from here.
Okay. And Dave didn't prepare a whole lot of slides here. A lot of the presentation today is going to really be digging into the Excel spreadsheet that looks at how we can generate the revenue that's needed, but that looks at different options for including right-of-ways, including tax-exempt parcels. We can make those adjustments in the Excel sheet. So a lot of the presentation will be pulling up that Excel sheet and walking that through it with you. But back to what's on the slide here, we do want to cover these topics, and I will be getting into this as we open the Excel sheet as well. But just as a recap from the July meeting takeaways, if nothing changes, the stormwater-related projects will continue to compete with other capital needs. One of the main benefits for developing the stormwater utility is not to be competing with other needs that are drawn from the general fund. The city is not currently regulated by the NPDES MS4 permit, but believes it should be acting as though it is. The inclusion or exclusion in a fee structure will need to be determined, whether or not we include the rights of way, nonprofit organizations, those that are tax exempt at the moment, as it will impact the use of credits as incentives as well. Other funding options do exist. I believe I'm looking through the meeting minutes from your previous discussions. There was a discussion about raising property taxes or parking fees. That is not the most equitable way. Stormwater utility does provide a way to put the fees on those that have the most impervious surface area. In general, residential properties have more of the tax burden, but commercial properties could have a lot more of the impervious surface. So the stormwater utility fee does provide that option to make things more equitable. And that public education will be important, and it should start soon. I have seen the importance of that from other stormwater utilities that I've worked on. So it's a good idea to start that sooner rather than later. So I'm gonna, unless you all want to start having discussions on anything previously discussed, I'll pull up the Excel sheet and get into some details on that. You all ready for that? I don't know if anyone wants to recap anything from the last meeting in any more detail.
I can't
Jay?
understand a word she's saying.
Jay, at the last
Oh,
meeting,
can you hear me?
didn't we conclude that it would be some measure of new funding source and perhaps a hybrid, but not revenue neutral, I think is
No,
the last
yeah.
alternative, that we probably have moved past the revenue neutral. So we're going to find new revenue somewhere. Question is,
Such as the pockets of the people who own property. And
and it's,
anything past that is going to have to come out of some segment of the general fund.
so that's the hybrid approach.
Yes.
New revenue paired with
With-
some carve out
Yeah.
of existing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And right now, we're carving 100% out.
Right.
And so our task is to decide how we want to base this new revenue fund. We all said that we wanted new revenue. And we've heard pros and cons of everything. And now we decide where we want to get the new revenue. And I think once we decide that, we can start putting stuff together. We can start talking about square footage, segments for revenue bases, 500 square feet, or some towns do 3,000 square feet. But since we had the 2015 ordinance change, all the new houses only have 50% covered area, and whereas the old houses, the ones that were built before that, almost all of them have close to 60% covered area. So there's going to be a lot of discrepancies in our neighborhoods, and then on top of that, we're going to have incentives. So there will be further cutouts from that. But right now, the thing we need to do is to decide how we want to do it and figure out all the details as we go along.
And I think the spreadsheet will facilitate a lot of that because she can change whatever numbers. And you'll say, okay, if we're going to pay for it all, what would that number be per ERU or per typical Rehoboth, 100 by 50 lot, those kinds of things. And you can say, well, oh, that's way too much and we think we should have to. Maybe there's a compromise and maybe you pay part of it out of the general fund, part of it out of new revenue. But that's the glory of the spreadsheet is you can, hey, what would it look like if we wanted to pay this? Or what would it look like if we did not include the public streets and just did, truly property, and even to include the city-owned properties outside of the right-of-way. So those kind of things are what the glory of the spreadsheet is. And you can see whatever options or tweak whatever factors you want to and kind of look at what that number might be on a typical Rehoboth lot.
Okay.
Kevin, you alluded to either 3 or 4 properties. You had the detailed sort of, I guess, the grid to show us, or does only Dave have that?
Dave has the data, so the GIS data that we
Okay,
got from
so we haven't seen that
the
yet.
state, right?
But-
Right now, I think we're just kind of gonna base it on a typical Rehoboth lot. I think he's done some, commercial lots, some residential lots, so you can kind of get a feel for what some of those numbers might ultimately be.
Jay, can I ask a question? So whatever these various models are, residential, commercial, nonprofit, it's my understanding then that let's say a fee will be based on the size of impervious
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
But back to the funding, so the cost today to maintain a stormwater program is the goal to pay for it from these fees, and anything that the city streets will be paid for out of the current general fund?
About just street repairs?
Or, no, just, because we're talking about impervious surface, so if the city owns the majority of the impervious surface in Rehoboth Beach,
Right, certainly if you're counting the roads.
right?
Right.
Because last time I remember, we had a discussion about, does the city pay for its own, for its own stormwater management, right? So,
Yeah.
does that, would that come out of then the same fees, or does the city have to carve that out of its general fund?
I think that would be what you guys determine.
Yeah, I'm looking at you,
Yeah.
but really, it's
We wanna
looking at
make
you
it
guys.
Yeah.
Completely all new, so that even for the city, assuming the city's gonna pay for at least our buildings and our lots, right? So City Hall, all the various properties that we own throughout the city that the city would be responsible for. Whether that can come out of general fund, or that's all gotta be new revenue as well, to be determined, I think. You guys would. would set that
That's what we
recommendation.
decide. And as you recall, it was streets and roads are like 39%.
Right.
And only 22% of that 39% was state. The other was Rehoboth Beach, Delaware owned it. So they own most of the streets and roads in town, of which there's 5.7 million square feet, as you recall. And do we want to pay for that from the homeowners? I don't think so.
Well, the other thing,
Can we collect from them? It's hard to know.
yeah, well, and Suzanne, you brought up maybe we increase the parking fee, if I'm getting ahead of myself, but,
We're
increase
sure
the
gonna do
parking
that.
fee to pay for, the city's stormwater
Yeah,
management.
yeah. And that may be the decision of the commissioners
Sure.
when they put together the 2024 budget.
Okay.
Well, that was only to ask that it be, just for for simplification, a
I knew
50/50
what
split.
what you were.
We're gonna make our
Which seemed reasonable if we really want to go ahead and have a separate stormwater impact fee
We're going to make our
on property
recommendations
owners.
to the commissioners. They may accept it, they may not. What we're going to do is decide what we recommend.
Okay.
And it's easy. It's easy. If we got problems with the numbers, and you'll see that as we go along.
I have I guess it's for the consultant. My question is, from other municipalities with utilities, how do they handle the roads typically?
Can you hear Christine?
I can hear, yep. Some include them and some don't. Black and Beach has done a pretty good, extensive survey of all of the stormwater utilities in the country. And I can take a look at some more information to see how many include them and how many don't. But, some do and some don't.
I guess specifically, Christine, for instance, you've worked, it sounds like in the state of Virginia, a moderate amount. Did the Virginia Department of Transportation ever begin transferring some of its funds to cities like Alexandria, which adopted a stormwater impact fee in order to offset, the stormwater costs of all those roadways? Did that ever happen, that the Department of Transportation decided?
Give her a chance to answer.
I know that they included the DC Metro, all of the impervious surface for that. They are charging DC Metro. I believe they ended up not charging VDOT for the roadways, and they did not charge their own city property.
So
well.
Christine, how was that? Where was the money that was going to be used for? Where'd that money come from? Were projects delayed, stormwater projects? How did they handle the lack of funding?
Well, they adjusted their ERU rates to cover their needed revenue, but considering not including city property. So they do have a lot of residential and commercial property that were able to get that revenue that they needed.
And I think he said at one of the meetings that Newark, which is one that David had worked on, did not bill the feds and did not bill the state. So they did not do the city roads either, but they did all of the city-owned properties.
So the shortage of money then was made up how?
In the fee structure. So you just have a lower numerator.
So they transferred that,
Correct. It went
that
back to the
responsibility
property owners.
to the homeowners and the merchants. Okay. But I guess that gets out of our hands once the Board of Commissioners decide how they want to fund things.
All we'll do is make a recommendation to them that
Yep,
we're going to Impervious area and we're going to
or
ER.
whatever we do, yeah.
What do we want to include in that
Yes.
fee base? Is it Delphi
Yes.
Roads? Is it Rehoboth Avenue?
Yeah.
Is it the post office? Is it City Hall? Those kinds of things. I think Christine is saying that, we have all kinds of things. Some do it some way, some do it another. I know David had said that in Newark, they discount the public right-of-way, so the roads, but they do pay on the city Newark-owned properties. And they did nonprofits as well, also had to pay. So those were questions that we had discussed, over the last couple of meetings, of
Right.
who should pay.
Yeah.
Dave mentioned Newark, that they had not been able to get Del Dot to contribute, so I'm assuming that would happen here, but Newark's not a resort town. I mean, there is the University of Delaware, but which might be considered somehow separate, but, we have this influx of tourists who use all of our infrastructure. I just think it's a little different than maybe Annapolis is a little more analogous.
You may
Worked
need
on
to,
Annapolis. In Annapolis, was there an attempt to cost share with the tourists and the non-residents, or?
They were only charging residential and commercial properties. They
Okay.
did not put any of the burden on the tourists.
so it's going to depend on what we recommend to the commissioners. They may decide to do one thing or decide to do another. I know the city of Harrisburg was billing the state, and they were billing the city for their impact, their stormwater impacts, and they were having a hard time getting money from the state. The state mandates our stormwater program. They say you have to have a stormwater program. Now, when it comes to state roads, well, maybe not. But, so there's a discrepancy, and there is a political will in there somewhere too. But go ahead, Christine.
Okay. Yeah. This is the Excel sheet that Dave put together. I wanted to kind of start by just showing you the expenditures. I'm not sure if this has been reviewed with you all yet, but so basically the goal of the stormwater utility is figuring out what fee is going to be needed to cover all of the yearly expenses for the stormwater program. So, and there's two separate costs. There's costs related to general personnel, vehicles and equipment. This contract additional services, this all is considered the general operations and management costs. And then there are some additional capital expenses that have been added for larger projects. So one of the topics for discussion is whether or not the stormwater utility fee only covers the operations and maintenance needs, or also covers some of these larger projects as well as the capital expenses. And obviously there's larger projects planned for the coming years, and so those capital costs do increase quite a bit throughout the years here. So the goal here in coming up with our fees is to try to generate this revenue. We can look at it either as generating the revenue for the operation maintenance or with the capital expenses. So in this Excel sheet here, this ERU assessment, we can play with a number of different variables in order to either meet the operation and maintenance expenses or also the capital expenses as well. So the way this is set up, I just wanted to talk a little bit about, I don't think Dave has gone over with you the ERU, equivalent residential unit methodology yet. Has he discussed this with you yet?
Is not.
I
It
can,
was in that very
let me go over that
first
first. So,
presentation
Yeah.
back in April, I
Yes.
believe it was.
Yeah.
Where he had all the different kind of example lots. Then we said,
Right.
well, that's not a typical Rehoboth one. So they went back and did a smaller one for a typical
Right.
Rehoboth. So we have seen it before. It's probably not fresh on anybody's mind.
Say, Christine, is there any way to blow up this
Laura?
spreadsheet? It's impossible to read from here.
oh, okay. Let me see if I can try to, let me look at the view.
If you go to the home up at the, oh, there you go. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you. Oh, she
That's
lost
never a
it.
good sign.
She's chatting.
All of a sudden, she's in a chat again.
You can tell by I look on
Yeah, right.
So the ERU is equivalent to one standard size residential lot in Rehoboth. And the idea is that if it's a commercial property, it'll be some multiples of ERU units.
My understanding, yes.
So you get out of that idea of having to map, like, street level, every piece of property is one of the advantages of that. And she's going to show us the cost of year one budget for one ERU. Is that that's kind of what we're looking at here?
Yeah, she may be
Okay.
able to do that.
Okay.
So the other thing that I don't know if we talked about in this forum or not, is, when we were coming up with the list of capital projects, we were looking X number of years out, and we had, the two big ones, they are large, right? So you got Byard Avenue, which is large, you got that Basin 40 area that doesn't have stormwater infrastructure. So, there are ways, right now, we're crunching all that into that 5-year window. So, just throw a number out. So if you divided that up and ERU becomes $500 and you're saying, okay, each typical house in Rehoboth is going to pay $500 a year, divide that quarterly or whatever. So, a couple of, that's way too much. Okay, well, we can always expand the time frame out because the base costs are pretty standard and they pretty consistent. But the two big projects, maybe you don't do them back to back, right? Maybe you to make one a 3-year project instead of a 2-year project, or one of them a 4-year project instead of a 2-year project. So there's a way to lengthen that capital cost or spread that over a longer term, which would help them bring that number down. But I think until you see what that number is, maybe it says it's 300 and you go, hey, that's great. Well, that's certainly worth doing, and crank them out. I don't think it will be, so you see what that number is, you can say, well, that's a reasonable number that we could make a recommendation on. But there are other things besides the number themselves that we can do to help mitigate that number.
So Kevin, I may have missed some from last week, but is there a way so when you're talking about that number, that budget out there, so we've got to fix those areas, whatever. Is there a way to think about, from a resident's point of view, I don't know that I should fix it, but maintain it and keep it going? So like, okay, after we get that house fixed, and then is there a budget? Is a thought been to do that? Like, say, okay, it's going to cost $1 million to run this stormwater project. We've got everything done. That's what we should pass that along to look at that number. Am I making kind of sense?
If I understand it, yes. You can just, to kind of continue the way we are, we know what those operations and maintenance costs are. And you just kind of hold the capital in abeyance until you
Yeah.
have to. So you wait until, something happens, and then you go in and, you usually spend more doing it that way, but it certainly helps spread.
Because I see the 5 years, so let's just say you were saying in 5 years you'll have that done. But I see year 6 will be a lot less. So in other words,
be, that's-
our fee's gonna be based off of those first 5 years that we're charged with fixing the thing, maintaining place, getting a permit, doing everything. And then that next 6 years, so that's what I'm saying. So it wouldn't be fair to say, okay, it's gonna be 300 here, and then all of a sudden now,
I
it could
think
be 100.
You're saying exactly what I was trying to point out with the length of time we've used. We crammed everything into that 5-year because we have a 5-year CIP, where that, in that window, it captured those 2 big CIP expenses. So we
Okay.
crammed it all into 5. Whereas you're right, on year 6, all the big capital expenditures are done. We're just now into operations and maintenance. It's a much different number. So the thought would be, if you wanted to look at it over a longer period of time, those same costs, same capital costs, spread over a longer term, then it brings that annual fee down considerably.
Right.
Could come down considerably.
Yeah.
Right.
If you look at the third page of that spreadsheet I sent out, you'll see those totals at the bottom. And what I did was just average those out, and it came out to 1.5 mil. Actually, it was about 1.2 something million, but that's just capital. That's not maintenance, that's not supplies, that's not the price they labor or anything like that. That's on the first 2 pages of the spreadsheet that I sent you.
Okay. You're saying not to maintain the program. That's not. That's just,
Yeah, precisely. This is just the average of the capital expenses that we're looking at. Now, if we have to dredge Lake Gerard, or if we have to build a bunch of new storm drains, Kevin just talked about Bayard Avenue, that's gonna be well over $1 million.
right.
And the Basin 40 is 1.4 million. Plus, we don't know how much sharing we're gonna have to do with the state. We just don't know what's coming down the pipe. That's why we need a steady flow of money in the out years. And making assessments or changing the rate of ERUs. You just don't want it to go up and down all the time. You want to figure out a happy medium and just keep building that quarterly. Now, we just talked about, as you recall, Dave said it was going to take 14.4 cents a square foot to pay for all of our O&M and all of our CapEx that we know about, which is that $2.1 million. And if you have a 3,000 square foot house, you're going to be looking at $432 a year with Dave's 14.4. But as Kevin said, we may say that's not doable, and we need to change it. What we need to do today is to figure out a basis for our fees so that we can do the very things that Kevin was talking about. If you do taxes, it's the EPA tells you that basing it on taxes is not equitable, and it will never stand up in court. The same thing if you live in a certain tier, that won't stand up, because a hotel may have a different impact than their parking lot does. And the parking lot may not be worth half as much as the hotel, or the third as much. So those are not equitable, and they can't stand up legally. We have to weave our way through and figure out what we think should be done. Tell the Board of Commissioners and let them carry the ball.
So just to kind of refresh back from when he did the numbers back in, I think, April, and looking at an eighth of an acre lot, which is a pretty decent size for Rehoboth, pretty close to our typical lot.
Is that the 50 by 100? Yep, okay.
Pretty close.
Yep.
So if we were, let's say we did not include the right-of-way, so we're not going to collect from the roads, whether it's our road, state road, post office kind of thing. So without the right-of-way, and we're paying for operations, maintenance, and capital, it came about $510.
Is that with nonprofits or without?
That was with,
What, I don't recall, but if it
yeah, it
is,
was with
right.
nonprofits.
So and then if you include the right-of-way, it's 300. So you can see, 300 versus 500, the streets make up a lot of the impervious area in Rehoboth. So that kind of frames it in very rough numbers, because it's the big number divided by, an eighth of an acre gives you that kind of number.
Is that with city properties,
Included
non-roads?
city properties,
Yes.
but
Not
not the
roads.
right-of-ways. So
Okay.
with the right-of-ways, on the order of 500.
Okay.
If you discount the right-of-ways and just properties, on the order of
Around
300.
300,
Yes.
So that's the ballpark I think we're kind of
Which is
talking
what she's
about.
showing up there.
And
Because if you include the right-of-ways, you get to 14 million, I can't remember
And
how
then
many square feet.
Christine she can say, oh, well, let's include it. What is it if you include it? What is it if you don't? So that may even be
Right.
better data than, a couple of months ago. So you can just ask her to change whatever in there you might want to change. With
So this
respect to the numbers.
doesn't, this is
Yep.
$300. It doesn't include the roads, correct? Are we,
So
what
you
what
can
are
go-
the assumptions?
Yes.
on
No, it
this?
says
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Includes right away, no. So go ahead and change that to yes, Christine, and show the difference. So,
I can show you, yes. Can you hear me now?
yes,
Yes.
yeah, thank you. We got
Okay.
you back up.
Um,
And the 3,000,
So
that's, should be fine.
these expenditures over here, so this is basically looking at all costs, including the capital costs. We can change this to O&M only, and it changes these expenditures here. And then it shows, can you all see the Excel file a little
Yes.
better now?
Yeah.
I tried to zoom in. Okay. So that changes, if we just do O&M, what would you like to see?
Well, the right-of-way didn't change anything, did it?
It
change
doesn't
that?
change the expenditures, but it changes, we'd have to change the rates to cover the revenue here. So if we have this back, so if I have it on no,
It changes it down
you
there.
can see down here that at the end of the year, we'll have a
That's what
surplus of this much with that revenue.
That's what you're
If
raising.
we, these are the expenditures, we're assuming only O&M. The revenue from the utility would be $888,000 at this fee. We can adjust the fee based on how much revenue you want to generate. And then, so if we do include the capital expenditures, obviously, there's going to be less left at the end, but it still does cover at this rate, at a $300 per ERU, it would cover the first year with capital expenditures.
But right, we go negative year 2, 3, and 4, right?
Right, because
Yeah,
those
so
capital
they're negative
expenditures
on the
do
bottom.
increase
That's
quite
the
a bit.
bottom number right there, right?
Yep. So if we are including the rights of way, that generates more revenue because it's obviously including more impervious surface, which bumps this up. But so this number could come down. The fee could come down if we're including those rights of way. We could adjust that to 200 maybe. And obviously get closer to the actual budgets here. You could do 150.
But it
Does-
doesn't address where that
Where the
right-of-way
money-
fee comes from.
Right, it
So
goes
it's right
kinda
back onto the
The
city.
general budget,
Correct.
General fund, yeah.
right, which is,
We assume Del Dot, which only owns, what did you say, Jay, 20% of the roadways in Rehoboth, maybe less?
22%.
But it doesn't sound like they ponied up anything in Newark anyway. Yeah, that would just be,
Well,
it would
they-
come from the general fund if you're just saying you're going to assess
Doesn't really
all the
solve the
roadways, which are
This-
80% owned by the city.
The commissioners may decide to do that.
Right, which, that
Which
would
is-
at least
and that-
spread it
that-
out more
that lets
evenly.
us out of the equation. Once we decide, once we make our recommendation, they can do what they want. We can't force them to do what we say. We'd like to. We can't
But I
force
mean, that's a nice compromise, because in the end, the general fund is funded partly by user fees on tourists and visitors and partly by property owners and residents. And so sort of captures what.
And once
at
we,
least I want
once we
in
have
terms of
decided
sharing.
how we want to do it, we can go that route. We got to decide what we want to do first, which we haven't done yet.
So if you change the cost to operation, from all, just to operation and maintenance, who pays the other? Who pays?
It competes with the
Yeah, right. It goes back in.
Then it goes
all the
back
other
in-
projects,
The general
all the other
fund
budget
competition.
projects.
And probably
Which is
doesn't
what
get
we're trying to get
done
away
until
from.
it bursts.
Right, okay.
Right?
Emergency.
We certainly haven't done them yet, right? And
Okay.
they've been on the books for
Right.
8 or 10 years, probably. Yeah.
Christine, take that spreadsheet away. We're 10 steps ahead of where we ought to be. Okay.
And obviously, you know, there's different options to set different tiers. This is set up right now for a single tier, so all residential parcels would be basically charged the same as one ERU. But we could change that. It's more equitable, obviously, to add additional tiers. You know, one option is to bill each residential and commercial property based on their actual impervious surface, but that makes it a lot harder to implement and bill when everyone has a completely different fee. So most stormwater utilities do some sort of tier for residential properties, which makes things more equitable, and it also eases the billing process as well. And adding tiers actually increases some revenue as well.
Christine, would you
Are there
be
any
able to
questions on how
elaborate
those
on the
tiers are built?
Yeah.
So what's-
No, that's
No,
way.
we're ahead of us?
That's way ahead
Okay, we
of.
give her some-
Christine, take that spreadsheet down.
I want Suzanne, I want to hear about the
Okay.
tiers.
Down.
No more?
Okay, well, yeah.
All right. well,
Can you send that spreadsheet?
Can you send that
Clay.
spreadsheet to us?
You want me to stop it? I'll stop
Let's-
sharing.
Let's go on to, let's press ahead. What I'd like to do now is have everyone decide, let's all decide what our preferred mechanism of funding is. Do we want to do a tax? Do we want to do an assessment? Do we want to keep it in the general fund, which is status quo? Do we want to use pervious, impervious? Do we want to use a combination of something else? How shall we set up our funding basis? And I think we all have enough information to be able to do that.
Well, I'm all for going with the pervious, impervious, what we last saw here. It
Somebody
just seems
may-
most equitable
Okay,
with, you know, not with, between residents, commercial, nonprofits. I think there's still an issue with, you know,
So-
governments, but
Letitia, I think I heard you say that you want to do pervious, impervious.
correct.
But that's distinct from ERU, which gets away from having to look at each one and
Yeah, we-
at the administrative burden of looking at each property and assigning it. So it's like, if it's an eighth of an acre lot, it's one ERU. And you don't have the street level
Yeah.
map what concrete they have versus what lawn they have. And I'd be an advocate for the ERU approach simply because it would keep the administrative costs down. And it's not as granular as what you're talking about, admittedly, but in the long run, it might be, it's almost fair, especially when you're talking about commercial properties playing multiples of one ERU unit versus an eighth of an acre home.
I hear what you're saying, and I guess back to what Kevin was saying, I thought we had data from a GIS data that you mentioned at the beginning of the
We
meeting.
do. We have the ground cover layer that we got from the state when we did the, whatever the grant we got, Resilient Communities Partnership.
Yeah,
grant
resilient
a couple years
communities.
ago.
And
Yeah.
I guess, how easy is it to calculate based on that? Did Dave say?
Yeah, he started down that road, so we have a lot of that data. Again, the question becomes, every time somebody does a change and they come in and you have to recalculate the exact number, it becomes,
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think
More management.
when we get down to the incentives to create more pervious surface,
Right.
this becomes more valuable.
Right.
Sure.
But maybe to start out, we could start out with ERUs, but I think as we move along into the future years, you know, an incentive, let's say for me, was, okay, I'm gonna create some pervious surface on my property to lower my impact, perhaps.
I think the big impact is getting commercial properties to pay. I think that's probably the bigger impact on the overall fee structure, because, you know, right now, have most of the impervious surface, even against a bad impervious violator in an eighth of an acre lot, is nowhere near a parking lot for a commercial establishment.
I think that a lot of cities measure their big commercial impact areas, and they use different sizes of ERUs. I think Fairfax now uses 500. When they developed their utility, they went to 3,000, as we were just talking a minute ago. And when they finally passed it, they had gone down to 500. Because with 500, you can work that into a lot more houses. It's like we do water. You know, you pay for water at near, 1,000 gallons. When your bill comes out, you may have more or less, but you get that, whatever it is, it's close. And that's probably a really easy way to do ERUs. Although some cities have maps that you can go look up your property and see exactly how many, where you are. And they find that that's a very welcome thing for the homeowners. But I have one impervious from Letitia, one from Susan, Mary.
I'm ERU. I'm an ERU girl
Yeah.
with a, you may raise a good point about the incentives to improve.
And there's something called a credit manual that we'll put out that has all the incentives.
Okay.
It's easy.
You can still do credit with an ERU.
You can do credits with the ERU?
Yeah.
Just not as tied to good behavior.
Mary, Ron.
I'm in favor of the impervious surface, although I have to admit, I don't really understand what the data is and how easy that would be to implement, and I wonder if you really understand individual residents who maybe have a big paved courtyard, or do you see all that, or is it something more generalized? I have to say, I don't really know what that data is, but if, from what you're saying, if it's doable, I think that seems equitable way to do it.
Thank you. And they can get very, very accurate. And I'm not sure where we were. Ours was, you said, 212 or 216. I'm sure it's been upgraded since then. Elise, where are you?
I mean, coming in, I thought basing the fee on impervious surface was the best way to go. Now, but I've always been concerned about how administratively burdensome that could be. And so I am.
And I think that's why Susan
Yeah.
was thinking about that.
Yeah, if EURs are much easier to administer, I can see why the plus there. But coming in, I always wanted to see the homeowners and businesses incentivized to do the right thing, to really look at their surfaces and pursue more pervious pavement, because I see a lot of bad actors. And I know a driveway at a residential lot doesn't mean a lot, but compared to a business. But I think as far as flooding, I mean, I just see a lot of flooding issues with all the impervious surface we have on our streets. So, I mean, I'm really, really torn.
We can
I mean,
talk
if there's
about
a
that,
way to pursue credits with an EUR, I think that could be the best way to go.
Bob, where are you?
I'm for the ERU, and I would love to see a tiered plan so people are rewarded, and commercial places, would pay a little more since they are mostly covered. That's it.
But they would if they have more impervious surface.
Yeah.
He gets it.
Yeah.
He's a good commercial guy.
Yeah.
Jeez, I thought I had this silenced. I'm sorry. I'm always,
Okay, we're getting some consensus here. Suzanne, tell me what
So because of the overwhelming consensus that we need a dedicated fee, I'm with the ERU advocates, because since we have not been able to see this grid and these data, I don't have faith that it's going to reflect closely enough, one house versus the other. But simultaneously, I think one of the main problems or main recommendations we have to make, the building code should be changed so that concrete driveways are no longer allowed. My issue is these incentives. For instance, let's say the impact fee on a 5,000 square foot lot is $300 annually. If you were to get some sort of rebate or discount of, say, $50 a year if you pull out your driveway, who is going to incur a $10,000 to $12,000 expense to jackhammer out a concrete driveway to put in a pervious driveway in order to save $25 or $50 a year? I mean, it's just
we may recommend to the Board of Commissioners that we have an ordinance that says all new driveways have to be pervious.
Exactly. That makes complete sense to start mandating pervious surfaces where they're feasible for new construction, and also for people who do need to replace their crumbling driveway and need to get a permit
And
to
if you
do
replace
so.
your plumbing driveway with
would-
pervious, you get to mark down the square footage.
Well, if we were to change the building code, when you replace your driveway because it's crumbling and you were planning to do that anyway, it would just be the rule here that you have to choose a pervious surface. I'm not sure you would be eligible for some rebate that year. I don't see why we
If you decrease your
need to.
pervious surface, you'll be given credit for decreasing your pervious surface. It's a fairly simple equation.
Well, if
It'll
we
work.
went with ERUs, it would be a flat fee on those people, if they all have, like, for 5,000 square feet. And with the tiers, which we of course have not allowed, been introduced to yet, normally most of the ones I've surveyed looking nationally, there is a higher stormwater impact fee rate for commercial property owners than for residentials, if only because it's a tax deductible expense for commercial property owners, and impact fees are not tax deductible for homeowners. So that would be my, and the last thing is with the roadways.
You've exceeded your 3
Sorry.
sentences. Press on.
So, if recently, I guess I'm not understanding how, because pervious, when I just recently built a house, so I'm in favor of ERUs, but with credits, and they told me that, you got a 50 by 100 lot, 3,000 of it you can take up, 2,000 you have to keep it natural, so I didn't come in and put it in the permits, my builder did, but, so, to me, they're there, I guess, so they could easily, if I wasn't allowed to build a 4,000 square foot house, not to say that I would want, or take up 4,000 square feet on my 5,000, then, there are rules already in.
Yeah,
right? So
in 2015, we said that you have to go to 50% natural. And the code tells it natural.
Right.
You were before 2015, obviously.
No.
Sounds like he's doing it right now.
Busted.
Don't say anything.
Tear it down.
Oops. But Jay, walking around town, many houses built since 2015
Right.
have a
Are-
much greater than 50%
Are you for pervious or
footprint. I don't-
impervious?
Or ERU?
Credits, ERU.
How about, well, okay, your ERUs are based on impervious surface.
Yes.
Okay, Letitia,
You heard my.
I got you. Joe, she got to vote twice.
Jay, you just said the ERUs are based on impervious surface, so it's one or the other, right?
You measure impervious surface, and that goes into the square footage, makes up an ERU, an equivalent residential unit. That's how you tell
I
them.
don't know, then we're voting on a difference without a distinction, or we're saying.
Right, Susan and I thought, you and I
I
thought
thought we were just doing
simplifying it,
ERU
right?
simplified
Right.
versus another way of doing it would be the more granular impervious surface.
That's right, because you can't.
Christine, can you
you
help
can't
us
get-
out on that?
I'm confused.
Yeah. I
Kind of
am
talk us
too.
through the differences between a straight impervious surface
And an ERU.
versus an ERU, how the ERU is developed, that kind of thing. Uh-oh, we lose her?
Can't hear us.
Nope.
Yes.
Are you, sorry, was that for me?
Yes, sorry, Christine. Yeah, can you kind of walk us through
Yeah,
the,
so, yeah,
kind of the difference between a
my
straight
understanding is
impervious?
you all are voting here on whether or not you all charge each property individually based on their exact impervious surface, which can be done. Or if you are sort of grouping properties into either one ERU flat fee or tiers of breaking the ERU into tiers. So the ERU obviously it's more it makes the administrative burden a lot less because you're billing either 3 different fees or whatever tier you want to bill. And the impervious surface method would obviously take a bit more time. One of the disadvantages of that is that if someone does increase impervious surface, like how are you going to be monitoring that? How often do you update the land use data that you have with impervious surface layer? Is it once a year? Is it every few years? That can become a problem. If someone builds a pool, how are you tracking the impervious surface that is updated throughout the years? So that's one reason why a lot of people do use ERUs, just because it kind of takes that out of the equation for small changes that do happen on properties.
But Christine, this is Letitia. Is the ERU based on impervious surface? The
Yeah.
square footage?
So the ERU for Rehoboth was calculated by Dave as 3,000 square feet. That's the equivalent residential unit. That's the median. He's looked at all of the parcels within Rehoboth and has determined that 3,000 feet would be the ERU for Rehoboth Beach. And that's based on looking at, I can show you the graph that he created if you want to see that, but how we calculated that. But that is, yes, based on the impervious surface.
That is based on impervious surface?
That was an average based on that 2017 data set. It was 3,000 square feet on a typical 5,000 square foot lot. Is that right? Kevin, is
I
that
think
your
it's also
understanding?
based on what's legally allowed today on a 5,000.
Right.
Which is,
60,
right now, it's
60.
2,500.
Right
Is
now
all
it's
the,
20
huh?
When did that change? Or
2015, that was 2015. We can make an ERU anything we want, but it's a measure of
Correct, but it's
impervious
usually
surface.
based on the medium, assessing all the impervious surface in the area, which can you see my screen here?
If you could
Which
blow it up, it would
Dave
help.
did
a
this
little, yeah.
calculation,
See it.
and it comes up right at 3,000
That's for
for
Rehoboth?
the non-residential,
Yeah, that might be the median.
for the residential properties, yes, for Rehoboth.
After 2015.
And
they're all gonna
often
be-
commercial properties are looked at
smaller.
differently. They are charged directly based on the impervious surface. It's just the residential properties that uses the ERU. There are different ways to apply the ERU to commercial properties, but in many cases, those are charged directly based on their impervious surface, which does make it a bit more equitable as well.
Joe, I missed you.
So, yeah, I think I'm on this committee because I have the EPA background, so I have to talk about, environmental stuff. But based on what Christine just said, I think I was going to go permeable versus impermeable. I think I can go with the ERU because it is based on impervious surface. So I think that would reduce the administrative costs to start up and to keep going. And when she said, with annual improvements to people's properties, which they're doing all the time, that's going to create administrative costs that we could probably avoid by using the ERUs. So I think I'll go with the ERU.
Yeah, when we get to talking about billing and how we're going to count all this, it'd be great to get Bert in here. He runs the Munis system, and they'll be billing the stormwater fees through Munis. I think quarterly is what they're going to set it up at.
I mean, my one concern is incentivizing people, how do we make sure that improvements are following what we'd like to see as far as impervious versus pervious?
I think Fairfax has theirs renewed every, some, like if you take a pledge that you're not gonna use any fertilizer, I think they may let that go for 5 years. If you have a rain garden, they wanna see that it's kept clean and operable, and I think they check that every couple of years. I have that credit manual somewhere. I can send it to you. I have it on file.
I think everybody would probably like to see that. It would be good to see, what those incentives.
Could we just clarify, Kevin, under the ERU system, a 2,500 to 3,000 square foot house on a 5,000 square foot lot would pay the same stormwater impact fee as a rundown 1,200 square foot cottage on the same 5,000 square foot lot? Is that true? Because if that's true, property taxes actually capture better, like larger houses obviously pay more in property taxes than smaller. Property taxes actually capture better the typical house's stormwater, generation of stormwater than do ERUs, in my opinion.
Actually,
and we don't have all the administrative burden.
What we'll be doing is there'll be an appeal process. The credit manual tells you what you have to do to get the appeal process going. And we'll find that there is some discrepancy. Nothing like what you're describing, but there are still some old, smaller houses. I promise you that when they're sold.
There aren't a ton, really, of old, smaller houses left.
And when there's-
Dilapidated small houses in Rehoboth.
There are, and when they're sold, they're all torn out.
But they're not, that's not a huge,
It's a dwindling number,
It's a
granted.
dwindling
So
number.
if you want to assume they'll all be gone in another decade, then I guess that's a rationale. The ERUs are just as good.
But you could build a 3,000 square foot McMansion with rooftop gardens.
Sure.
That would be,
And they have-
impervious surface that would.
You bet. And
So
that's
your property tax wouldn't necessarily reflect the size of your house.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
as far
we
as
also
that fee
have
goes.
houses that are on 2 lots. I don't know how many, probably not as many as the old ones, but we have a lot of houses that are on 2 lots.
Well, and I live in a condo, 4-unit condo, which is 4 small cottages. It's maybe the last few that are left in Rehoboth. So,
Yeah,
if we're on a
yeah.
5,000 square foot lot, but there's 4 cottages on it,
And
we'll have to figure
condos
out how
are
to.
a totally different.
No, I understand, but this is
Different
kind of going to
category.
be probably on that bell curve. We're one end to the other.
Okay. We have voted overwhelmingly to go to a fee structure based on pervious versus impervious
No,
surface.
ERU.
ERUs.
Which
based on impervious.
defines an ERU. And now we go on to the next.
Yeah, I think we said ERU based, but the ERU is based on pervious versus
Right.
impervious.
If we make it based on ERUs, it'll be that.
Yeah.
I think 3,000 is wrong because we should be using a smaller number.
it really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
What
It
the
does
unit
not
is.
matter.
Just, the point
Yeah,
is, it's a standardized unit based on lot size.
To-
And perhaps
yes.
tiers for bigger lots.
Right.
To reduce administrative costs. Okay,
Back to you.
let's go on to the next topic. Whew, we made it, folks. We made it, Amy.
That was excellent.
Okay, Christine,
Well, what do you want to do next?
Yep.
you want to start talking about how we divide up the ERUs? Or do you want to talk about,
Right away?
Is this new business?
we want to talk about right-of-ways? You want to talk about what categories are we going to exclude nonprofits? Are we going to make the city measure their property? Are we going to exclude religious organizations? Or are we going to assess them fees? We have to decide all those recommendations.
Do they already pay the the water sewer fees? They would pay the
Who's that?
religious institutions, nonprofits?
Oh, yeah.
Then I would say, yeah, they would pay this fee too.
Yeah.
They're struggling,
Big
but
parking lots, a lot of times.
Big parking lots.
But luckily in Rehoboth, the only
Not huge, right.
big parking lot is
Right.
ours.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Do we,
you're gonna assess it on us.
Well,
probably.
we learned that the library and Rehoboth Beach Main Street do not pay their own water and sewer bills. The city covers it. And maybe does the museum also, are they also exempt from water and sewer? But I learned that the library and Main Street, Rehoboth, the little cottage, the city covers their water and wastewater treatment bill.
Christine, how many parcels do we have in Rehoboth? Do you have that information?
I'm sure Dave does have it in here. He has the total breakout, a percentage between single family, multifamily, non-residential, government, miscellaneous, and right-of-ways for the impervious surface. So, single family residential is the highest percentage. You can see though that the city rights-of-ways are pretty high as well. Let's see. For non-residential properties, what total is he asking? He did get all that information, has the specific impervious surface information for each residential and non-residential parcel. 18,061, does that seem right?
1861 parcels.
For non-residential property, or 18,060? For residential parcels?
A residential
That
parcel,
residential.
1861, that's not, yeah, it's not too low for all parcels. Christine,
For
would you clarify that you
commercial-
have 1,861 residential parcels is what Dave calculated?
That's what he has individual numbers for, yep.
And that's how many bills?
370 non-residential parcels.
How many were those?
And were those based on taxes sent out, tax bills?
They all have tax parcel IDs. I'm not sure if this came from the city or the county.
Okay. So
Dave did mention that the city parcel data was a little different from the parcels from Sussex County. I believe this is the total parcel data.
So what's that number? That's 12,000.
Christine, do you have commercial parcels and, municipal parcels and not, other parcels? Besides the 1861?
That's probably in this total parcel city file, which is 12,000, which probably includes a lot of small little slivers as well
That's a lot.
of municipal
Maybe.
parcels.
The proportion seems off.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, I don't think those are, there are probably better numbers.
1,000 number seems reasonable.
Yes. As I recall, there's 193 commercial hookups for water. So there's not a lot of commercials, but a lot of our hookups are on residential water hookups. They're commercial.
That was part of the problem, if I recall the discussion earlier that Dave had when we were going through this with Bert, is that the city, we don't really classify things as residential and commercial because we have a lot of mixed use things. So one of the things we will have to tackle is, okay, how do you treat those? Because we can't just sort on commercial and residential. So do we do it by the district? There are some, and it was a low number, I want to say less than 20 of ones that we had to go back and then use county data for because we didn't have that specific information in our database. So again, we're talking on the margins really, as opposed to the big picture of things.
But if we would use a smaller ERU, we could measure big properties or little properties or whatever we wanted and just use a multiplier and get the final bill. If we're, like, you may live above a restaurant, but that parking lot is a certain size, no matter what. And they have the same storm sewer impact, no matter what. So with say a 500 square foot ERU, we could divide it up. Whereas I'm at 3,000
Well-
feet, so I would pay six ERUs.
Another way to tackle that is to charge properties with less impervious surface, including condos, as a fraction of the ERU, rather than setting the ERU at a lower number. They'll actually charge a property with much less impervious surface, a half of an ERU or quarter of an ERU. City of Alexandria, I think for condos, they charge them 0.22 of an ERU.
Yeah.
Another way to do it.
I think you want to set your one unit as the most prevalent observation in your universe, because then they're all one. And then variations from them, either multiples of an ERU, or I guess certain condos, a fraction. Just for, again.
I think it helps make it justifiable, right?
Right.
Because you're using data to set that point, as opposed
right.
to just come up with an arbitrary
Right.
number. So you have some rational basis for having selected that. So I like that approach that he took when he kind of came up with a number, and we could take that number, and we think we could justify it based upon the data he's done.
And I suspect that Bert could tell us the easiest way to divide that up when they send out. I think Susan's talking about much easier for billing.
Right.
And I suspect we'll get Bert in here.
Would homeowners be able to protest the ERU that they were assigned and come up with data that says, look, I've got
You bet.
a gravel driveway, blah, blah, blah? Would they be able to?
You bet. Same for commercial. If they want to protest, they too can. And the credit manual that Fairfax City has, they even have included an application in there that you want to fill out to protest.
Okay.
So it's common.
I mean, I'm not enthusiastic about any of this aspect. Janice Miller even told us in Arlington, or
Geez,
Fairfax,
City.
that people who participate in a litter cleanup, a volunteer endeavor, can go to the Arlington
That's
City
right.
Hall and get, I don't know, a $25 credit. So I guess all of you are aware, we're really, I'm not sure, hopefully won't need a full-time employee to deal with this, but it's just getting out of control in terms of anyone who undertakes a minor construction project in his or her yard, and then people who, anyway, so yeah, we'd have all that too. Appeals, like property
But
tax
there-
appeals.
Yeah, when you're dealing with $2 million or whatever our income, our revenue is going to be, you'll have to have a way to appeal. County does it.
Yeah, but those are things I think, I'm hoping we could build it into some of our existing administrative infrastructure.
Sure.
Like through permitting, if somebody's
Sure.
changing something, that's where,
For sure, that would be the
and-
plan,
and
right?
for appeals, there's property tax appeals, maybe
Sure.
it's going to be filtered in through there, so I'm hoping that we don't have to build a whole.
And as I recall, there were a lot of options for people. If you would take a pledge not to use fertilizer, if you would, as you said, if you take a part and clean up the lake, and if you build there's a bunch of things. The idea is to incentivize people to clean up their stormwater and to diminish the quantity. That's what the EPA is going after, and that's why these daily loads are set, just to get everybody to clean up their stormwater and cut down on the quantity. And they're really worried about the estuaries, which we are. Rehoboth Beach dumps into the ocean, and they're going to really look at us. So I'll send everybody the latest memorandum. It's kind of scary.
I mean, maybe Mary as part of the Environment Committee, I guess Eric, you are too, isn't that something the Environment Committee or even the board should be doing? We should ban certain toxic fertilizers in the city of Rehoboth. Now, good luck enforcing it, but.
Well, there's limits to what a municipality can do on fertilizers are federally regulated, and I don't know legally whether the city of Rehoboth can flat out ban. We'd like to, but I don't know that we can. But yes, we should approach this whole thing more holistically, definitely, and not just through this stormwater process, but there's a lot of other ways to attack our problems.
I mean, I'm only mentioning that because we're suggesting people who take a vow not to use certain fertilizers for 5 years, go to City Hall and get some credit for that promise, which to me isn't worth much.
But it's even more basic than that. I mean, we need to encourage people to replace their lawns
Yeah.
with perennials and native plants, basically.
Oh,
If you got rid of the
absolutely.
lawns, you'd get rid of the noise issue that has been raised about all the gas-powered equipment used by the landscapers and homeowners, and you get rid of the fertilizer problem. I mean, we've been
That's a
talking.
great idea,
I
but
mean,
do we
we've
need
been-
a stormwater impact fee to mandate that? We probably could do it through other means, but, you know, we could, so
There
they're
are,
simpler.
there are communities that charge a impact fee on new construction, a stormwater impact fee. They call it a ready-to-serve fee, and that's something that probably should be considered. But since we're going to be paying as we go with a fee, we may not want to have an impact fee because you're going to start charging a new house the day they get it inspected. But where are we, Christine?
So I'll just throw out, I love that idea, Commissioner, because a lot of our problems come from, the building lots. Because you see.
Yes, they do.
It looks great when they first get their permit and they put their silt fence up and they got the gravel driveway in and everything else. And then after a couple of storms, you just see the trail of muck going out into the
Lake,
storm
right.
drain. And, yeah, so.
I took pictures yesterday
saw
on my
that.
cell phone.
Yeah, I'd love to see something like that, but that's personal.
Back to the brief.
Yeah. So did we vote on anything else yet?
We're going to go for pervious, impervious, and then next
No, we're going to
ERU.
ERU.
ERUs. And we're going to measure our pervious, impervious with ERUs. And we are going to talk about, when do we want, how many people are in favor of assessing nonprofits for their impact on stormwater?
Are you including religious?
I've only talked nonprofits right now.
Well,
I'm back on board
that's
for
a
that
big
once we have a
universe.
fee.
Same.
It's all one
I mean,
big tent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, how many nonprofits
Because they don't
do
pay
we have in
taxes.
Rehoboth?
Tax exempt organizations.
Yes.
that's better. Tax exempt organization.
Yeah.
Looks like we're unanimous. Let's talk about religious organizations.
Wasn't that?
Aren't
They're
they-
tax
they're one and the
exempt.
same.
Tax exempt.
They're tax exempt.
We just
They're
voted.
tax exempt.
Their tax.
Do we want to give them a fee?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
They're paying
We're
water
on
and
board.
sewer, I think they
Yes.
should, already.
that's our argument, that they are paying water and sewer.
And they've got big footprint.
Do religious organizations have filed 1090s or 990s? Does anybody know? Does the church?
I think they
If
have
they're
to
tax
file,
exempt,
but
they
don't
think they have
pay.
to file something with the IRS.
Yeah. So let's say religious organizations pay the fee.
Do you have to make it that granular, just tax exempt organization?
Let's just put them all.
Right. Let's say who doesn't. State roads, or, wouldn't it be easier
Do
to say
we,
who doesn't?
do we want to make state roads exempt?
I don't
Make
think we
them,
should
do we
say-
want to make them violate the code, violate our recommendations?
Well, we may not want to, but it sounds like the state of Delaware doesn't, even if they're asked, they don't pay. So
It's like, like the sewer and water, you're billing the property owners. And I would think we'd be better off keeping our options open with the roads and not carving out an express exemption, but starting out with we're billing property owners for this.
Okay, if you guys want to do that, we can do that, but that's 5.7 million square feet of impervious surface.
Mary-
Rehoboth Beach, Delaware.
39%, right?
Mary, are you saying that we
Impervious
should
surface.
build the cost of that into our ERU?
Well, no, I'm saying that what we heard earlier is that most of the roads are owned by the city. So it's going to come out of the city one way or the other. And so I think it's a little nonsensical to bill the city, but also, I also heard that the state, apparently, I don't know whether they've taken an official position, but apparently Dave said that Newark hasn't been successful with them. So,
Yes or no?
so I would say they have not. So it just sounded to me like even though it would be great to get that money for the roads, it doesn't sound like it's really going to be something that would work, so.
Well, we're not gonna get that money, but I would be in favor, we're going to technically bill that 39% of the acreage in this land, and it'll come from the overall budget, which we know means general fund at the end of the day, but at least that asks the visitors and tourists to share this massive stormwater infrastructure fund for the next, in fact, that was my other question to Kevin. You're 6 to 10. If you had to guess, I know you don't, you can't be certain, but you don't think after the two major projects, Bayard Avenue and Basin 40, there will be inevitably another stormwater project, or you think it might there might be a hiatus for a decade or two?
No, there are other projects we got.
Much smaller, I would say.
Yeah, they're smaller, yeah. But if you look at the map.
Then you're
and look at
repairs as
Scarborough.
opposed to. I think that we're making repairs at that point, similar to what we've kind of been doing. We're not putting a new system down Bayard Avenue or a new system in Basin 40.
Well, it's an indirect way, but at least I prefer, I don't know if anyone else agrees, that we need to bill that 39% of the users, which is the roadways, which will go to, and city hall buildings, because that's the way to ensure that we don't have property owners, both commercial and residential property owners, footing 100% of this bill.
But effectively, that'll go to the general budget, which is going to either crowd out other projects or effectively create a new tax burden on homeowners. So I hear what you're saying, but it's such a large amount that to do this revolving door of money in, money out. And if we just do the property, I don't know what you call that, instead of the roads, the property, then effectively a smaller amount hits the general budget and might be more practical. That creates that hybrid approach where part new revenues, part coming out of the budget. But I fear that if you take the city properties and then 39% of the other, that we're not doing much. Most of the revenue is still coming out of the general budget.
That's true. It would be even better, instead of 39%, take 50%, like say, if it's 1.5 million annually, take 750,000 being funded through these ERUs and get the other 750,000 from the general fund. That asks for a 50-50 sharing, as opposed to 61 or, what is 61 and 39? I'd prefer that. 50-50 would be even better, but it would, at the end of the day, crowd out other things. That's true, but we'd have to be more fiscally conservative and not, fund the Wilmington and Baltimore Avenue streetscape or whatever the case may be.
Right. Or they won't get done, stuff won't get done on the stormwater, stuff won't get done.
Yeah.
As it hasn't been done for.
That's right.
This has been building for a long
That's
time.
why we're going for additional funding. That's why you guys wanted to do that. And we might tell this, I just don't know. I'm on the fence on that too. I don't know whether we should say, look, this does not count right-of-ways, or whether we should just count the right-of-ways, and because we're not going to be able to charge the homeowners, the residents, and the commercial people enough money to pay for our CapEx and our O&M. 2.1 million a year is probably more than we're gonna, when we show this, when we start trying to educate the public and we tell them that we're gonna charge them $500 a year for stormwater fees, we're gonna get pushback.
It exceeds the property taxes of some homeowners.
Christine, we have about a $30 million budget in Rehoboth Beach, and we pay about $2 million in property taxes. The rest of it comes from rental taxes for tourists, comes from parking, comes from fines, comes from all sorts of tourist-generated revenue. Transfer taxes is kind of on the fence. So our property tax just amounts to damn near zip.
Right.
And it's hard to threaten a homeowner to take their property taxes down $100 from 1,000 to 900. You just can't reward them that way. So we're gonna have to make some decisions on how we want to present this to the public, and go from there. We got tax exempts. We're going to include tax exempt. Is there, as Susan said, is there anybody who we don't want to bill besides the state of Delaware and the city of Rehoboth? I think they ought to know that they're contributing 39% of stormwater impact surface. But I just don't know how we want to do it.
Who owns the cemetery? There's one, I know.
Epworth Church, I guess. Oh, they're gonna.
It's a lot of
Yeah,
impervious.
and how about the one over here?
Well, the cemetery is all natural.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah,
that's
that's-
the
True,
most
yeah,
imper-
but-
that's the
But
most
if you
permeable
charge
headstones.
them, if you charge them
After all the
three
headstones.
ERUs, I don't know how big, is it like 15,000 square
It's gonna be
feet?
an appropriate ERU.
It's gonna be a hefty bill for a cemetery which has so much pervious land.
Let's not go there.
I'm just, yeah, I don't.
You brought it up.
Rounded top will flow off.
This is too much fun. We got,
What do we say on the feds? Post office? We're not gonna get it, right?
If you're
no,
not
that's
gonna
a federal
get it,
building.
No,
No,
you're
we
not.
know we're not getting
You're
it.
not getting that.
We're not getting it.
Really?
come on, yeah.
Can we at least have the conversation with somebody? I mean, just like, just on the record, okay, we asked you the state of Delaware, you said no. Okay, we asked you federal, you said no.
They'll
Just-
put you on hold.
Yeah.
The state of Pennsylvania is trying to do it, and they're going after their Congress and their representatives to make the state pay for impervious surface. So far, they haven't had any luck, and as Dave said,
Well, it comes out of
Newark had.
taxes. It comes out of taxes.
Yeah, it's a circle.
Yeah.
Chamber of Commerce is a complex one because the city owns the land, right? But if they were to be assessed a stormwater impact fee, it would be nice if it came out of the chamber's budget.
Are they
and-
taxes now?
Well, it has to come over the landowner's budget. If you rent your property to somebody, you just raise the rent.
Right, it should be passed along, in my view, to the chamber in whatever, do you know, Kevin, how much the chamber pays in rent to the city?
Dollar? I don't know.
$1 a year, I
Yeah,
think.
well, in my view, I think the stormwater
We pay
impact fee should be
79 cents.
should be passed
You're
along
right,
by the
it's
city to the chamber. They have a lot of funding from various sources, they can afford it.
We have, the VIA has a parking lot. The Retired Railroad Association of the Penn Central Railroad has a parking lot. There are a lot of,
Legion,
huh?
American Legion,
Tax exempt?
American Legion has a parking lot.
BFW.
VFW has a parking lot.
Rehoboth Elementary, they're.
No, believe it or not.
Rehoboth School District is not gonna be happy.
No, they are self-contained. I walked the periphery this morning. They are self-contained. They have no stormwater impact. They have,
Oh, they built all
That
those
big
rain
pension
gardens and
barn.
things? So you're gonna figure out a way that they get a net bill of zero? Is that your plan?
I don't know.
Well, that goes against the the
ERUs,
concept.
yeah, it's like,
Because I feel that I'm self-contained, but I
That would be a credit process.
Yeah,
You'd
that-
bill them and
that's
then
a-
they'd have to.
That's a credit.
exactly.
The-
This is gonna be so
If you build,
complex.
if you build a detention pond, the school has 2 huge detention ponds, one in front and one's in back. And when they're running, I couldn't believe it today, all of their storm drains go into there. The one in front is a little bit higher than the one in back. So when it overflows, it goes to the one in back. And then the one in back has to be full before it drains into somewhere. I don't know where it is.
They have huge
Lake-
huge
lake-
asphalt that drains into the street there.
Yeah, towards
Whereabouts?
State Road.
Towards
and-
school view.
Yeah, and,
Across the street from the school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed today the center part is higher, so that all drains, half of it drains to the school and then goes into those detention ponds. And the other side goes into Rehoboth storm drain.
But for the process, they'd be charged because they fall in the category of entities that are charged. And it would be incumbent upon them
To appeal.
based on whatever formula we've created for credit.
Yep.
and someone in building and
Because-
licensing would have to evaluate this. That's the plan
Because-
on deck.
Because when the drone takes the picture, that all shows impervious at the school. So but they're self-serviced. In some states, North Carolina, I was reading this, they require that each person does an analysis to see if they can not provide excessive stormwater so that they can take a inch of rain or something like that. They have it in their ordinance. It's pretty neat.
What about the problem with mosquitoes? You know, if these people have these retention ponds in their yards.
It's for a different committee.
Because I'm worried, you know, to try to ask people to install, like it to be stormwater neutral like that.
If you'll read the
Retention ponds or something.
if you'll read the sediment manual, you'll see that they designed those to only last for like a couple of hours or something like that. And then
Oh, it
and then
seeps into the ground.
Well, they put rock under the bottom. They have that cloth, and then they put mulch on top, and then that's the retention pond.
What else do we have today?
Shall we let everybody out 10 minutes early and
But
get a
if
new?
we could, let me just circle back. So, including the rights-of-way, streets. States? No. I think I heard. City road? No. Federal building? No. School district? Yes. Those are all how we're gonna at least continue to move
City
this
property,
forward.
yes.
City properties? Yes.
Everybody else, yes.
Are there, yeah, I liked your idea, Susan. There really aren't any exemptions because we want to sort of spread the burden,
Right.
right? Even if funds just get transferred from the city to this stormwater impact
And the
fund.
reason we're not counting the state and the city is because it would be a wasteful exercise.
Okay.
Not because they don't make an impact, because they do.
We're moving forward with ERU. We're moving forward with all new revenue, knowing that we may have to adjust that when we see what the number really looks like. If we wanted to go back and stretch projects or.
What is all new revenue for taxing the city for its property? Is that all new revenue? That's sort of,
That's a great question.
I don't think it is,
know.
is it?
Yeah.
Are you,
And I can
because you're
figure-
gonna pay a bill and then you're gonna
Correct.
put that in the general budget. So it doesn't seem like that's new revenue.
Yeah, we can at least now quantify what that is, and would we need to then factor that into the rate for the ERU?
Right.
Because we're not going to be able to collect enough money to pay for everything. Just no way.
We'll move,
So-
the next step will be
Yeah.
going with city paying their parcel, their buildings and empty lots and parking lots and that, not the city-owned streets. And we'll just see what that number looks like and then how we need to make adjustments from there. And I said all new, caveating it that way.
By making this decision, we let ourselves go ahead and get to work on getting finished with this
Trying to
utility.
focus in on the end result.
We're funneling down. We're funneling down. This is a great committee.
That answered all of my questions for today.
Christine, there any way that maybe some of these EDU numbers, we did briefly see them at the April meeting, but it was, I think we were.
We'll run back through them next time.
It was
yeah.
Newark, Delaware, wasn't it? Kevin, do you recall?
Newark. for
Newark, yes.
the Delaware residents.
We haven't actually seen any specific numbers for
I have a
Rehoboth
list.
Beach properties.
I have a list of about 20 cities, and I have all of their ERUs down, to how much, what they go with. That's how I found out that Fairfax used to use 3,000, and then they went to 500. And I'm not sure that's what you were interested in.
And the May present, I have it. So the May presentation kind of shows you some of those.
I'll send that
I mean,
stuff to you.
it frames it for you, I think, a little better than just a kind of a general.
Are you going to circulate this presentation?
Yes, yeah, certainly will.
That brings up something else. How much of that spreadsheet can we see? Is it function? As you recall, we could work the
We have no
utility rate.
intention of issuing it out as an Excel spreadsheet, all right?
It's huge, right?
Play around with the
Oh,
numbers.
my God, it's just.
Enormous,
we just
probably.
can't.
I think, I have a notion to build one.
Well,
because
how about-
We can certainly give you the PDF version.
Yeah.
See all
Yeah, that
those
would be
things that
good.
went into it.
Well, especially just, that first section of the spreadsheet where you see,
start
the
manipulating.
ERU, the yes, no, on right away, all that stuff, yeah.
We could probably.
Yeah, we can generate some different, using different variables, we can create some PDFs from that sheet for you. That's helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Well, and on that spreadsheet, when you run a deficit, though, that's effectively what's getting shoved to the general budget.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So it allows you to see the mix.
That's the beauty of being able to work it.
Well, you're not, that would be dangerous.
We work math.
People would change
We work math.
formulas.
Oh, my
So,
gosh.
yeah.
Never share your spreadsheet.
Dave does-
Somebody
You
messes
can
with a
share it,
cell.
but you can share it, but you have to
No.
lock it.
That's a general.
Put locks on
Lock
it.
all the cells.
Because I've done that, yeah.
Yeah.
You have
Don't
to do
touch the
that.
spreadsheet.
Yeah, you have to put locks on it. Grant people who can use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even the smart computer guys can get it.
How
Any
close
of
are
us that? No.
No.
All right, so that's an option. I'll talk to Dale. I mean, he has a lot of concerns with, issuing out the Excel spreadsheet, but maybe if we can lock the cells.
You can.
You can't change anything except for those couple of
Right.
entries. All right, so
Allow them to play with
we'll
those
see
3
if
or
we can
4.
be convinced
Yeah,
on that.
that's not a difficult.
No,
It's doable.
that's not hard.
Doable. What else do we need to cover today?
You answered the questions I needed answered today, so.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
have-
And Dave just had a
Anybody
list of things for
anybody else
future
have
meetings
any-
here.
Well, I just wanted,
Christine?
Christine, go ahead.
Do you see the slide? These are what Dave pulled together for future task force meetings. I think you already talked quite a bit about exemptions, but I think for September, he'd like to focus on, adjusting those variables in that spreadsheet, how we handle mixed-use parcels, and talk more about credits. We can review some other credit manuals that are out there. I think you've already discussed the rights of way. And then October, looking at determining preliminary rates and ranges of rates and program metrics. And November, getting to a point where we're able to develop recommendations for the mayor and commissioners. Does that sound like a reasonable schedule?
The one thing I don't see anything about is the public education piece.
Oh, boy, we got to, as soon as the commissioners say yes,
Is that
we
when we're
got
going
to
to
start
start that?
gear.
Yeah, and I think, and I'll just say that you spoke with our communications director.
Yeah, we did.
A little time ago.
She's really good.
And we're gonna get after just general stormwater information, started getting those out routinely, both on the web and in little messages on the bills and those kind of things. General stormwater things that are good to do, and not really focused on pluses and minuses of the utility yet until the board says, yeah, we want to look at that, or we're thinking about moving forward. We just didn't want to get ahead of the Board of Commissioners.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of great general stormwater things we can be doing as a community that she's going to start putting those things out.
There are some really great cities that have those kinds of educational brochures and YouTubes and all kinds of publications that are on their website. Take a look. Arlington County has a bunch of stuff
yeah, we saw that last time.
and everything. Okay, we say we're going new revenue. we say we're going impervious.
No, ERU.
We're saying, we're saying we're going to use the ERU.
Got it right
So
here.
we've done all
minutes
the,
will
we've done all our objectives.
We'll do everything all at once.
Okay.
I would just want, are there any comments from citizens? No.
I do want to apologize to the Diefendorfers for boring them out of their mind for the last hour.
Yeah, they're in the Navy. What do they know? The Navy guy.
We're adjourned, folks. It is, oh, so it's time. It's 2 minutes till 3.
3 o'clock, exactly.
Hey, good job.
We did a lot of good stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. I'll call you.
Nice to meet everyone.